I sort of want to have a quick look at the question of scale, because I do represent what we like to think of as a medium-sized county in California, but it's probably a small county in all truth. And I like to ask a question about the relationship of scale to absolute. If you see a number like $80 million, you think, oh my God, $80 million. $80,000. Oh my God, $80,000. You see $7,000, you think, yeah, $7,000. Well, if you look at that absolute number as a percentage of the total amount that's spent on an election, I think you get a more accurate picture of where our priorities are. At general pledge time, preachers are fond of reminding us, that where our money is, there is our treasure. That tells us what we value. Well, I did a quick estimate on the back of it's not the back of an envelope, but it may as well be. And I estimated I added up only the essential activities for an election for our 2006 gubernatorial general election in Yolo County. And I figured it, leaving out overhead, leaving out my staff's time, leaving out, what we pay for distilled water and pizza for staff at sometimes, that election cost $3.38 per registered voter in Yolo County. What's the normal amount that you spend per registered voter in LA County? Is it similar? Yeah. Our audit cost 8 cents per voter. I don't think that's a lot of money. I don't think that 8 cents out of $3.38 is a lot of money. I don't think it's a lot. I'd be willing to pay a quarter. Your account in Kings County costs 50 cents a voter. I'd pay it. I'd pay it to know that elections are accurate. And now the question of whether or not audits really tell us whether elections are accurate is another question, and it's truly a question we should be considering at this conference. And I'm sorry that it doesn't appear that we are. But we need to look at elections obviously from a true human factors point of view, starting with how people register to vote and ending with the day that an election is certified. But since we're only looking at this little part of the process today, and we're making an assumption that, as we heard in our first panel, that it actually does make a difference if we do a post-election canvass or an audit, that it will have an effect on people's behavior. And I think that's indisputable. I do think that the post-election canvass probably serves as a deterrent to people who'd like to commit wholesale fraud, either by corrupting our machines or stealing ballot boxes or whatever. So if you value the audit at all, the question is, do you value it at 8 cents out of $3.38? Do you value it at 50 cents out of $3.38? Well, my answer is yes. And I am extremely skeptical of my colleagues who will, an audit bill will go up to the legislature in California, and Dean's boss, if it's up there before the end of December, is going to sit right next to me at the table and talk about how elections in Los Angeles will crash. They will crash if we have to do a different or a better kind of audit. The escalator is going to kill us. It's going to kill us. She also said the same thing about access for disabled people to polling places back in the 90s. So, you got to consider the source. I understand that there's an issue of scale for these gigantic counties, but I just don't understand why the values that are reflected in the way money is spent in these counties isn't more clearly presented. And I'm saying if it's 8 cents a voter, if it's 25 cents a voter, it's not too much to pay. And my other big concern with respect to this allocation of resources is the amount of resources that we're going to allocate in order to improve auditing, and that's going to include the time that we spend in the legislature. And God bless Ron Rivest, who today stated an equation that anybody could explain, because these very, very complex matters of statistical analysis are going to be a stumbling block. For a year, and my first real job after grad school was as a statistician, and I was hired by our medical school at Davis to demonstrate whether or not we had students who were cheating, and to do that using statistics. And I demonstrated that they were, but I couldn't convince the doctors, and so they decided just to ignore the whole thing. I mean, that's how some scientists, if you believe physicians or scientists, use statistics. So if you consider how they're received by legislators, I think we need to be very careful about that. But the number one thing we need to do is somehow get some solid data about how much these things really do cost. Because if you ask the California Secretary of State, she'll send out an email to every county in California, and we'll self-report. If anything, I'll under-report because I want better auditing, and some people will over-report because they don't want to change the way things are done. So I think we need to do a little better job of gathering up the data before we leap into any very vigorous legislative action. In the meantime, I don't think audits are all that expensive. They're a pain, that's for sure. You're really tired after the election. You do not want to do this. But I tell people the election isn't over until the canvass is over. And we have, some time to do it, and we're going to follow on and do it. So just, when you talk to your election officials, try to pin down how much per voter or per voting opportunity the audit really costs.